The crystal chandelier reflected across polished wine glasses as my sister lifted hers for another anniversary toast. Before anyone could drink, my grandmother smiled at me from the other end of the table. "Tessa," she said warmly, "is the $4,500 I send you every month enough?" My fingers froze around my fork. The room blurred for a second. I looked at her, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what money?" Silence crashed over the dining room. A glass slipped from my father's hand and shattered against the hardwood floor. No one moved. Grandma's smile slowly disappeared. "The money, sweetheart," she said, her voice softer now. "The $4,500 I've been sending you every month for years." I shook my head. "I've never received anything like that." My father forced out an uneasy laugh. "Tessa's joking," he said too quickly. "You know how she is." I didn't even look at him. "No," I said, "I'm not joking." Every face around the table turned toward me. Grandma's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. Then she slammed her palm against the table so hard that the silverware jumped. "Then someone," she said, staring directly at my father, "needs to tell me exactly who I've been sending my money to." No one answered. The only sound left in the room was the slow drip of red wine from the edge of the broken glass onto the floor. The dinner had been supposed to celebrate my older sister Melissa and her husband's 15th anniversary. The private dining room buzzed with easy laughter only minutes earlier. Family stories bounced from one side of the table to the other while servers carried in another course. My father, Richard Brooks, sat proudly near the head of the table as he always did, directing conversations without anyone really noticing he was doing it. He'd always been that way. Reliable. Organized. The one everyone trusted whenever money, paperwork, or family decisions needed handling. Including Grandma. She lived 3 states away now, and after my grandfather passed, Dad insisted on managing nearly everything for her. "She doesn't need unnecessary stress," he'd often tell us. Nobody questioned him. Least of all me. At 31, I worked as a pediatric occupational therapist. I loved my patients, but the job didn't make me wealthy. I picked up evening therapy sessions whenever I could, postponed vacations year after year, and quietly watched my savings disappear each time rent increased. Whenever I struggled, Dad always gave the same answer. "Life isn't supposed to be easy, Tess. Everyone earns their way." So I stopped asking. As Grandma looked between me and my father, her confusion deepened. "I've never missed a month," she whispered. "I swear to you," I answered quietly. "I didn't even know there was supposed to be money." Several relatives exchanged nervous glances. An aunt slowly lowered her napkin. My cousin stopped recording the celebration on her phone. Even Melissa's husband, halfway through cutting the anniversary cake, quietly set the knife back onto the table. Dad suddenly pushed back his chair. "Mom," he said with forced patience, "this really isn't the time." Grandma never took her eyes off him. Instead, she asked one calm question that seemed to drain every bit of color from his face. "Richard, who exactly have I been sending my money to?" No one spoke after Grandma's question. My father looked around the table, as if searching for someone else to answer for him. Finally, he forced a smile. "Mom, let's not ruin Melissa's anniversary over a misunderstanding." Grandma didn't blink. "I'm asking a simple question." Before he could respond, my father stood and looked directly at me. "Tessa, come with me." His tone wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. Growing up, that voice meant the conversation was over. I hesitated for only a second before following him out of the dining room. The hallway outside was quiet, except for soft music drifting in from the restaurant. The moment the door closed behind us, his expression changed. "What are you doing?" he asked through clenched teeth. I stared at him. "I don't even know what you're talking about." Then stop saying you've never received the money. I haven't. He rubbed his forehead impatiently. Listen to me. Grandma's 82. She gets confused. Just tell her you forgot about the transfers. I frowned. Forgot receiving $4,500 every month. It's complicated. No, I said, it isn't. His jaw tightened. You don't understand the arrangements. What arrangements? There were different accounts over the years. I've had the same checking account since graduate school. You probably closed one. I didn't. Every answer I gave seemed to corner him further. For the first time in my life, my father looked less like the man who always had an explanation, and more like someone desperately trying to invent one. He lowered his voice. Tessa, please. The word startled me. He never pleaded. Just tell Grandma everything's fine. For what reason? For her health. I searched his face. If there's something I'm missing, explain it. I can't. Why not? Because, he stopped himself. Neither of us finished the sentence. Instead, memories I'd spent years trying to bury began surfacing one after another. The apartment where I skipped dinners because groceries had become too expensive. The old sedan I kept repairing because I couldn't afford another. Selling the jewelry Mom had left me after she passed away. Working extra evening therapy sessions until nearly 10 every night. Canceling a surgery my doctor recommended because 6 weeks without work would have destroyed me financially. Every single time I reached my limit, I'd called Dad, not asking for money, just asking for advice. His answer never changed. Everyone struggles eventually. You'll appreciate success more if you earn it yourself. I can't keep rescuing you. I'd believed every word. Standing in that hallway now, I felt sick. If Grandma had truly been trying to help me all those years, then why had my father watched me drown without saying a word? The dining room door suddenly opened. Grandma stepped into the hallway. She wasn't angry anymore. She looked heartbroken. Richard, she said softly, would you give us a moment? Dad hesitated. Then, without looking at me, he walked away. Grandma took my hands in hers. They're rough, she whispered. I laughed weakly. Occupational therapy. No. She gently turned my palms over. These are the hands of someone who's been working far too hard. She looked directly into my eyes. Tessa, every birthday card I sent included a note. I got your birthday cards. And every Christmas, Richard told me you called to thank me. I called to wish you Merry Christmas. Her face slowly fell. But you never mentioned the money. I couldn't mention something I never knew existed. She covered her mouth. Oh, sweetheart. Tears gathered in her eyes. I thought I was making your life easier. You've always made my life better, I said quietly. But not because of money. She squeezed my hands tighter. Every year your father told me you were busy. He said long phone calls exhausted you. He told me you preferred texts. He told me you didn't want me worrying about your finances because everything was finally stable. I slowly shook my head. I've never said any of that. Behind us, several relatives had quietly stepped into the hallway. No one interrupted. They had heard enough. My father noticed them too. For the first time that evening, genuine panic crossed his face. Grandma slowly turned toward him. Then, looking from me, back to him, she asked the question no one at that anniversary dinner could ignore anymore. If Tessa never received my money, where has every single payment for the last 6 years actually gone? The question hung in the hallway for several long seconds. Then Grandma straightened her shoulders. We're going back inside. No one argued. When we returned to the private dining room, the celebration was over. The anniversary cake sat untouched. The candles had burned themselves out. The servers quietly slipped away after sensing something had changed. Grandma remained standing. "Everyone," she said, "please sit down." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. For the first time in my life, even my father obeyed without saying a word. She placed both hands on the back of her chair. "This dinner will continue later." She looked directly at Richard. "First, you're going to explain my money." Dad leaned back with an exhausted sigh. "Mom, this has gotten completely out of proportion." "Has it?" "Yes." He gestured toward me. "Tessa probably forgot about an old account." I immediately pulled my phone from my purse. "I've had one primary checking account since I was 24. Dad shook his head. "You've had others." "No." "You moved apartments." "I changed addresses." "You switched banks." "I never did." He looked around the table. "You can't expect someone to remember every financial detail from years ago." I unlocked my banking app. If there were monthly deposits of $4,500, I turned the screen toward the family. They'd be here. Everyone leaned closer. I scrolled back. Month after month. Paychecks. Rent. Utility bills. Student loan payments. Car repairs. Medical expenses. Nothing else. No mysterious deposits. No forgotten account transfers. Nothing. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. My cousin whispered first. "There really isn't anything." Melissa slowly frowned. "Dad." He looked at her. "What?" "You always handled Grandma's banking." He answered almost immediately. "Because someone had to." My uncle nodded slowly. "I remember offering to help once." Dad laughed nervously. "I told you, I already had everything organized." Another aunt spoke up. "And every Christmas, you collected Grandma's paperwork before anyone else saw it." Dad looked irritated. "So?" Grandma watched every exchange without interrupting. She was listening now. Really listening. One memory after another surfaced around the table. You always mailed her documents. You always printed her statements. You always drove her to the bank. You always said she hated online banking. Every comment tightened the room another notch. The picture was changing. Not because anyone had proof. Because everyone suddenly realized my father had made himself the only bridge between Grandma and the rest of us. He hadn't simply helped. He'd controlled every connection. Dad slammed his hand lightly on the table. "This is ridiculous." He pointed toward me. "You're all acting like I'm on trial because she doesn't remember receiving money." "I remember my life," I answered calmly. "I remember borrowing overtime shifts. I remember selling my mother's jewelry. I remember choosing between paying rent and replacing my brakes." I looked him in the eye. If I'd been receiving $54,000 every year, I think I'd remember. No one defended him. Melissa slowly leaned back in her chair. Her expression had changed. Not anger. Confusion. "Dad." He turned toward her. "What?" "You always said Grandma insisted everything go through you." "She did." Grandma finally spoke. "I never said that." The room froze again. Dad stared at her. She opened her handbag and carefully removed a thick envelope. "I brought these because I wanted to show Tessa how proud I was that she'd been investing wisely." She unfolded several neatly organized papers. Bank wire confirmations. Each one carried a date. Each one listed the exact amount. $4,500. Every month. For 6 straight years. Gasps spread around the table as relatives quietly began counting. 12 payments. Another 12. Oh my goodness. My father swallowed hard. He reached toward the papers. "Mom, let me see those." She pulled them back before he could touch them. Then she looked him directly in the eyes. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Richard, why were every one of these transfers sent to your account first?" For the first time that evening, my father had absolutely nothing to say. Grandma slowly folded the papers, placed them back inside her handbag, and looked around the table. Nobody leaves. Every chair stopped moving. Every phone stayed on the table. No one reached for their coat. The anniversary dinner had officially become something else. No one moved. The restaurant staff quietly closed the doors to the private dining room after Grandma assured them the family needed privacy. My father finally broke the silence. "Mom, you're making this look far worse than it is." Grandma folded her hands. "Then make it look better." He forced a chuckle. "It was bookkeeping." "Explain." "I handled the transfers temporarily. For 6 years. There were tax reasons." "What tax reasons?" "You wouldn't understand." "I managed our family's businesses with your father for 40 years, Grandma replied evenly. "Try me." For the first time, my father looked genuinely cornered. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "I can get records." "Please do." Instead of searching, he simply stared at the screen. Nothing appeared. No explanation came. Grandma calmly picked up her own phone. "I'm calling Martin." Everyone around the table recognized the name immediately. Martin Ellis had been my grandparents' financial advisor for nearly 25 years. She pressed the speaker button. After 2 rings, he answered. "Margaret, everything all right? I need you to answer one question honestly." "Of course." "For the monthly transfers to Tessa, who instructed your office where the money should be deposited?" There was only a brief pause. "Richard Brooks." Every eye in the room shifted toward my father. Grandma continued. "Did I ever authorize changing the destination after that?" "No." "Why were the funds sent to Richard first?" "Because he informed us that Tessa preferred indirect deposits while she was relocating. He said it would only be temporary." My father immediately interrupted. "It was temporary." Martin continued before anyone else spoke. "We asked several times whether the arrangement should be updated." Grandma's expression hardened. "And Richard assured us everything was working exactly as intended." The room became painfully quiet. Grandma asked one final question. "Did your office ever receive proof that Tessa actually received those funds?" Another pause. "No. We relied on Richard's written confirmations." Dad leaned forward. "That's standard practice." Martin sounded confused. "I assumed you kept your own records." "I did." "Then show them," Grandma said. My father opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. I looked at him, and pieces of my own life suddenly began fitting together. Every birthday, when Grandma wanted to visit, but somehow canceled at the last minute. Every Christmas Dad told me she wasn't feeling well enough to talk for long. Every family gathering where he somehow answered questions before I could. Every time I suggested calling Grandma directly. He'd already spoken to her. He'd always been in the middle. Not protecting us. Separating us. Grandma slowly reached into her handbag again. I almost forgot. She placed several folded letters onto the table. I kept every thank you note. She slid one toward me. "I always treasured your handwriting." I unfolded the paper. My stomach tightened. The words thanked Grandma for another month's generosity. The signature at the bottom read, "Love always, Tessa." It wasn't my handwriting. It wasn't even close. I didn't write this. Grandma quietly handed me another. And another. 6 years' worth. each signed with my name, each written by someone else. Melissa leaned over my shoulder. I've seen your handwriting 1,000 times. She looked at Dad. That isn't hers. An aunt compared one of the letters with a birthday card I'd signed for Grandma earlier that evening. The differences were obvious. Even the shape of the letters didn't match. No one tried pretending anymore. Richard's face had turned pale. Then my cousin spoke, almost to herself. Dad invested a lot of money into Melissa's boutique around the same time. The room turned toward my sister. Melissa looked horrified. I thought he was using his retirement savings. She stared at our father. Dad, you told me you'd planned for years. Richard looked from one face to another. I can explain. But this time, no one rushed to hear him. The explanations had run out. The evidence hadn't. Grandma slowly stood. She picked up her phone one last time. Without taking her eyes off my father, she said quietly, I've already asked my lawyer to come here. The color drained from Richard's face as the weight of those words settled over the room. No one spoke after Grandma's announcement. The dining room, once filled with laughter and music, had become painfully still. My father remained seated, staring at the polished wood of the table as if refusing to look anyone in the eye. 20 minutes later, there was a quiet knock at the private dining room door. An older man in a navy suit stepped inside carrying a leather briefcase. Margaret. Thank you for coming, David. He greeted everyone politely before taking a seat beside my grandmother. Without drama or accusation, he opened the briefcase and began arranging documents across the table. I understand there are questions regarding a series of financial transfers. Grandma nodded. I want the truth. Then let's begin with the records. He laid out bank statements in chronological order. Every monthly transfer originated from Margaret Brooks' investment account. He placed another stack beside them. Each instruction redirecting those transfers came from Richard Brooks. No one interrupted. The only sounds were the quiet rustle of paper and the ticking of the dining room clock. David continued. Here are the written requests asking that all funds first be deposited into Richard's account. He produced another folder. And these are the confirmations stating the funds had been forwarded to Tessa. I leaned forward. They weren't. I know. He looked at me sympathetically. We compared your banking records with the transfer history before arriving. He paused. There is no evidence that any of the monthly payments ever reached you. The words landed like stones. 6 years. 72 monthly payments. None of them had ever entered my account. David opened one final folder. We also reviewed the handwritten correspondence. He carefully spread the thank you letters across the table. Each letter assured Margaret that Tessa had safely received the money. Grandma picked one up with trembling hands. I believed every word. David placed a genuine birthday card I'd written only a few months earlier beside one of the thank you notes. The handwriting analysis is straightforward. He pointed to several obvious differences. The signatures are inconsistent. The letter formations differ. The writing styles are completely different. He looked directly at Richard. These thank you notes were not written by Tessa. No one looked surprised anymore. Only devastated. Grandma slowly lowered the letter. I spent 6 years believing my granddaughter was comfortable. She turned toward me. And all that time, you were struggling alone. I couldn't answer immediately. My throat tightened. I finally whispered. I thought maybe I just wasn't trying hard enough. The room fell silent again. I worked every extra shift I could get. I looked down at my hands. I sold Mom's jewelry when I couldn't keep up with bills. I postponed surgery because I couldn't afford 6 weeks without a paycheck. I told myself everyone else had figured life out better than I had. I looked at my father, and every time I came to you, you told me struggling would make me stronger. Grandma closed her eyes. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She reached across the table and took both my hands. I'm so sorry. You never abandoned me, I said quietly. I know that now. Someone made sure we believed the worst about each other. Across the table, Melissa had gone completely pale. She slowly turned toward our father. My boutique. Her voice shook. You invested almost everything during those years. Richard nodded weakly. I was helping you. With whose money? He didn't answer. She looked at the transfer records spread across the table. Then back at him. Oh my God. Tears filled her eyes. I built my business believing you believed in me. She stepped away from the table. If this came from Grandma, if it belonged to Tessa, then I've been living off stolen money without even knowing it. I stood. Melissa. She shook her head. I'm sorry. She looked directly at me. I judged you. I thought you made bad financial decisions. I thought you just couldn't manage money. She wiped away tears. You were surviving, while I was unknowingly benefiting from what should have been yours. I walked over and hugged her. This wasn't your choice. She quietly cried against my shoulder. Around us, other relatives began speaking. I always wondered why Tessa never seemed to get ahead. I believed Richard every time he said she was too proud to accept help. I thought Grandma simply worried too much. One by one, they admitted how easily they'd accepted his explanations. Not because they wanted to hurt me, because they trusted him. Grandma slowly released my hand and looked at Richard. For years, she said calmly, I trusted you with the two people I loved most. Her voice never rose. You betrayed both of us. David closed his folders. I've already begun preparing the documentation. He looked at Grandma. We can immediately revoke Richard's financial authority. She nodded. Do it. We will also notify the appropriate institutions regarding the forged correspondence and redirected transfers. Richard finally spoke. Mom. She raised one hand. No. It isn't just the money. Her eyes filled again. You stole 6 years. No one defended him. No one argued. For the first time in his life, my father sat completely alone. The months that followed changed everything. Grandma immediately removed my father from every financial account, trust, and power of attorney she had previously given him. The diverted funds became the subject of legal proceedings, and investigators reviewed the transfers and forged documents. Assets connected to the misappropriated money were examined as part of the effort to recover what had been taken. Melissa voluntarily returned the financial support that had unknowingly come from those diverted funds. Rebuilding her business was difficult, but she insisted on doing it honestly. Our family gatherings became much smaller. Trust, once broken, didn't return overnight. Some relationships never recovered. Mine with my father was one of them. As for me, for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to survive alone. Grandma insisted every conversation happened directly between us. No more intermediaries. No more messages passed through someone else. She helped me pay off the debts that had accumulated while I struggled. I finally scheduled the surgery I'd postponed for so long, recovered without worrying about missing paychecks, and returned to work healthier than I had been in years. But the greatest change wasn't financial. It was personal. Nearly every Saturday, Grandma and I met for lunch. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we simply enjoyed each other's company. We laughed about stories I'd never heard because someone had kept us apart. We mourned the years we couldn't get back. And we made sure there would never be more years like them. One quiet afternoon, as we finished lunch together, Grandma reached across the table and held my hand. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes carried the weight of everything we'd lost. "The greatest thing I lost wasn't my money," she said softly. "It was 6 years with you." She squeezed my hand. "I'm never letting anyone steal that again."